Hello and welcome to the Klassiki Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Goff. Klassiki is your one-stop shop for the wide world of cinema from Eastern Europe. Subscribers gain access to our library of classic and contemporary films, as well as filmmaker interviews, video introductions, program notes, essays, watch lists, and much more. You can sign up for a 7-day free trial today at klassiki.online. Today, I'll be speaking with Alexandre Koberidze about his new film Dry Leaf and about the fascinating world of football on film. Sandro is a Georgian filmmaker whose 2021 film What Do We See When We Look at the Sky won the Fapрешki Prize at the Berlin Film Festival. It's a modern fairy tale and a city symphony about star-crossed lovers losing and finding one another over the course of a single summer in the city of Kutaisi. And it all plays out against the backdrop of an imagined World Cup. And it's one of our favourite recent films out of Georgia. Sandro is currently putting the finishing touches on his next feature, Dry Leaf, about a father who goes looking for his missing daughter among the amateur football pitches of provincial Georgia. And we wanted to find out more and to pick Sandro's brains about the deep and often overlooked connections between his two great passions, cinema and football. You can watch What Do We See When We Look at the Sky on Klassiki now, as well as reading an interview with Sandro about his cinematic influences while working on the film. And links for those are in the show description. Sandro, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to talk again.
Well, we're very happy to see you again, and we're all looking forward with great expectation to your next film, Dry Leaf. I know you're still putting the finishing touches on it at the moment. If you had to give us a quick synopsis of what Dry Leaf is about, what would you say?
If I would have made it like before I started to shoot, the synopsis was quite simple. It's about a man who drives around Georgia looking for his daughter who has left home. And only information he has where she could be are the simple handmade football fields in small villages, which he wanted to make pictures of. First, he has to find the villages, and then he has to, in these villages, he has to find these places and maybe ask around if she was there. And the thing is, he's not alone, but with her colleague. So he wants to help him. So these two people are driving around and looking for her and meeting different people, seeing different places. That was the premise, which we also did. We more or less we did this. That we drove around Georgia looking for because I didn't know about few places where I wanted to go, but most of it was not planned in a way that we said every day we were going in different directions and asking around about if in this village or the region is some place where kids play football. And then we would go there and film there a little bit, or film the people who explain us how to go there, and so on. But for me, the most interesting thing has become, like, film-wise, that I have forced myself not to plan exactly how and what to shoot, but to kind of think about it in the moment of making, which I've never done before. I always worked before with the storyboard or more or less well planned ideas how and what to shoot. And here every evening I had this kind of fight with myself to not make it and go somewhere and then look how it will become.
And was there a reason that you fell into that kind of more improvisational style of filmmaking? Did it just seem to suit the subject matter more? Were you looking for a particular kind of freedom?
Yeah, I think it was also, on one hand, I had a feeling I want to try something what I have not done before and somehow challenge also myself, also to have more fun in that way, that you are doing, exploring something. But also, I had a feeling that that's the way where you can maybe get more kind of surprises from the surrounding, when you are kind of following the flow, and of course making some choices and decisions, but still trying to look where it's leading you, and following more this intuition and the kind of coincidences.
It sounds like, just to me, tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you've kind of taken the idea, the ethos behind, say, your last film, What Do We See When We Look at the Sky, which is about the kind of magical coincidences in the kind of everyday world, and you've turned it into almost like a technique for filmmaking. Would that be fair?
Also, yes, yes. Also, like I read this book about a Japanese farmer who has this idea that he's not working much on his land, in a way that he's not trying to separate the different plants, or not to make all these kind of steps, which are more or less the rules how to get more harvest, but like letting it go more, and see what can happen, and what the earth and the plants itself would dictate. And this was also like, reading this, I thought maybe this is kind of a way can be applied to more different things, and also to this kind of filmmaking, when you let things happen, and like when patience is like important thing to have, just to sometimes wait, or sometimes not to know what will happen, which is not easy, because I don't know, when you arrive somewhere and you think, okay, it's a nice place, but what are we doing here? I had some pressure sometimes also with myself, thinking about that, like, should we sit and wait, or should I just do something, or come with some idea? The good thing was that the team was very small, like it was my father acting and my brother doing sound. So they were not putting a lot of pressure on me, saying, okay, let's do something or we'll leave. I think for me, it was also this calmness of doing it with people who I know won't get angry if we make a break of 3 hours or something, which would have been impossible with, I think, with people who you don't know, or whom you hear just, I don't know, maybe like breathing heavily, like being impatient of let's do something.
I was going to ask you about that. So your brother did the music for your previous film, and he's back with the music and the sound on this film. And you've also, like you say, you've cast your father, David, in the lead role. What was the thinking there? How did that come about? Did he need much convincing?
Not at all. Maybe it sounded more fun for him than in the end it was, because it was like quite a hard work, I guess, in a way that I don't drive and my brother doesn't drive, and we were with this one car whom he had to drive and also act sometimes while driving, or sometimes when we stop. And we drove a lot, working for many months. So I think it was quite challenging in that sense. Still, I saw that he was ready, and that he really wanted to do it, I guess. When I mentioned it, it was direct, yes, let's do it. It had both, like on one hand, it had this kind of practical thing that maybe really the only person in the world who would do it, like uh, because someone out of the family, I think, just will not be able to give you so much time and energy in a. But also, I had a feeling that his state of mind, or how he looks and how he moves, was like exactly the what the film needed. And then same with my brother. Also, like it's very precious that there's someone who you know will go with you any path you take, and again won't be impatient, or will have fun together with you in this sometimes maybe boring moments of just going around or going in circles. And now we are working on music. This last month we spent together, integrate these pieces into the film. It's not finished, but I think we are on a good way.
Well, you've got a little Koberidze family company now. Now you're going to have to take your father everywhere on every shoot that you do.
That's the plan. I put it already in him in the next one.
So you described your previous film, What Do We See When We Look at the Sky, as a fairy tale, or as following the kind of logic of a fairy tale. And I remember at the time when that film came out, you talking about how that kind of narrative logic of the fairy tale is very liberating. It kind of removes a lot of restrictions that you might otherwise be working with. Would you say that Dry Leaf continues this approach for you? Is this another fairy tale, another football-based fairy tale?
It has these kind of elements which we would maybe categorize as a fairy tale-ish. For example, I mentioned that there are like two main characters. My father, one of them, and the other guy who is invisible. And they are all the time together. And it's not only this guy, but when they move, sometimes the people they meet are also invisible. Like invisible, I mean that they have voice. You hear them, they interact and talk with each other, but they have no visible body.
I see.
Yes, but the rest I tried to keep very normal. So, like, I think it's important to make this one element kind of more real, that the rest stays really simple and I don't know, like really everyday situations where just this kind of people appear. It's still work in progress to build this world where some people are seen, some people are impossible to see, but they still talk, because it's a lot of also work in sound and work in sound design. So it gives you this endless possibilities of dialogues, for example. If you filmed a tree, you can say in front of this tree there are three people and they talk, or it's just a tree. So that's why also this editing takes a bit more time than expected, because at some point you realize you have this kind of possibility. So sometimes it's interesting to use or work on.
That's so interesting. I mean, it's a great conceit in the first place, but just hearing you describe it, then again, I'm feeling this connection with your previous film. That was also a film about kind of presences and absences, and whether one could see what was directly in front of your face, and the way that a camera can kind of reveal or conceal what's directly in front of your face, just in the everyday world. So it definitely sounds like there's this kind of continuity there in terms of what you're exploring and how you're going about filming it.
Yeah, I think this time I put like myself in this situation when now I have to see or like discover if there is someone or not, because the concept gives you this possibility to say that someone's there or no one's there, and sometimes just when I work, like you forget that maybe someone is there, because like the brain is not used to think this way, that it still not didn't get used to that actually in anywhere someone can be. Slowly my brain started to get used to see these people where they are not or where they are, and then it's about like what you see or what you can imagine. That's the only limitation, more or less.
Well, I can't wait to to see what you come up with, how it ends up on the screen. But I think maybe we should move now to a topic of conversation that I know that you and I could probably ramble on about for hours, which is football and its relationship to film. So this new film, Dry Leaf, like you've described, it kind of plays out in these amateur football pitches across Georgia. Your previous film, What Do We See When We Look at the Sky, the narrative is kind of pinned to this World Cup that's happening in the background, and these characters watching this World Cup playing out in the background. So clearly, football for you is deeply connected to film and to what you want to do with film. So if I could just start off with a very broad question, and hopefully there's a nice answer to it, but why is football cinematic for you? What is this kind of deep connection between these two loves of yours and mine, football and film?
Yeah, I think it has like different layers. On one hand, I think everything what a filmmaker has like big passion of can become cinematic, or like, and I think that's how the cinema works, that there's someone who wants to make a film, and he or she are passionate for something, and then they make a film out of it. And it can be anything. It can be I don't know, some romantic relationship, or it can be football, or it can be a pig, or it can be some personal problems in a family, or anything, no? And but if you have a true passion and interest of this subject or of this thing, then there's the challenge to make it cinematic, or to make a film out of it. And I think for me, why I try to always put football in there is that I know for sure that I am emotionally very much connected with it. If it's in there, I don't need to look for motivation or for anything else. I can go in with the whole heart, and I also feel it now, because now it's been already many months that I couldn't play like football for, and I miss it so much. Like, I think every night when I go to bed, like, I close my eyes and I kind of visualize myself like doing it, and then I fall asleep. That's how much I love it, and how much I also miss it, because that's also, I think, how I tried and to compensate also in film wise, that to connect, but also just to explore it again, like but this is, I think, like one layer which is universal, as I said, like, I think for maybe any subject or any problem or any beautiful thing, then it's the filmmaker who has to think about what he or she wants to do. Then for me, it was also watching it a lot, not a lot. I was watching maybe once or twice a week a game, not more. There was this season of 2011, 2012, 2013, when it was like one of the highest levels of this game I've ever seen. And this games between Real Madrid and Barcelona, where Madrid was also on top, on Barcelona as well. And these games were really nearing this kind of perfection, of where you have this 90 minutes of perfection. And it was kind of amazing to watch this kind of beings who are alive. These are not robots, no, but who somehow to manage to be in this kind of discipline of not not being allowed to make any mistakes. So you have to make everything perfect, and to see it then again and again, and then in slow motion, how they do it. and somehow to understand that it's something very related to, I think, like art, or how we, not only art but any kind of creation of different things. It can be poetry, it can be film, it can be a chair, but when in doing something, and doing something, also it's important, I think, under some pressure, when you have to like really maximize everything you have and make it also sometimes very fast, and that in these moments things happen which are kind of out of this world.
Mm.
And sometimes I have a feeling that's how also in the art world, or also in cinema, how things are burned. Like when, I think sometimes when you write, or even filming, or making photo pictures or painting, that's often, these are the moments, I think, when there are these seconds when some ideas appear, and then they are there, and then you can work on it. But if we talk about art, it's never visible, or we never know like how it happened, or when, or even if I talk about myself, it's really hard to catch these moments of this very high level concentration, when maybe I wrote something which later I think, okay, this is maybe nice, because it's always somewhere in between, and you never know. And here the difference is that we watch it, these things happen in front of our eyes, filmed with maybe 20, 30 cameras, from every angle, in every speed you want. And also this thing that it's about very concrete thing. It's not that as open as art is, or as maybe like contemporary art is, because film is still more limited than like the contemporary art today. But um it's about to make this goal. No, in football, it's quite clear
Mm.
where is it going, or why is it happening. And then in this very limited field, where also like the borders and rules are really important, that's also what you learn, that in these limitations of the rules, of time, of space, these people appear to make something miraculous, kind of. So the rules and borders and time and space limitation in football, which allows these people to be so creative or so perfect, is, I think, very interesting. Also, interesting lesson in sense of other fields of making things, also art or cinema, for me, because that's what I'm doing. Um, that it's a good lesson in that I think it's important to understand like where you are moving, depending on what you're doing. And as I try to do cinema, that's when I really started to think about it, like what is cinema, and what are the limitations of it. Because not everything is cinema, no. Which kind of borders should I set for myself? And that's why we watch also football, no, that to waiting for this kind of moments, that uh, something incredible something incredible can happen. And as far as I watched it for many years, these kind of things happen only under immense pressure and on the highest speeds. That's where something happens, and where when it leaves this normal flow and like enters something which is not reachable for us in everyday life.
That's such a beautiful description. I'm just in a reverie now, thinking about Messi and Barcelona and those moments that you describe. It's interesting. You mentioned there about how when we watch a football match, we get to see these incredible moments filmed with 30 very expensive cameras, every angle, slow motion, replay, and so on. And it made me think how, I mean, unless you literally go to the stadium, go to the game, we all consume sport, football, but all sport, as a kind of form of cinema. When we watch it on TV, we probably don't notice it, but the amount of kind of technical editing work that's being done is really incredible. Close up, replay, slow motion, new angle. It is like someone kind of cutting together a feature film in real time. Do you when you're watching a football match, do you ever on TV, do you ever find yourself thinking, "Oh, that was a great cut, great camera angle"? Do you have a director's eye when you're
I
watching it?
try, like I sometimes I try to look at this way, maybe to learn something or try to understand how they work. But I almost maybe every game at some point I think, okay, maybe let's I watch like this to kind of observe how it's made, but I never make it. Like I after maybe 10 seconds, I just forget that I wanted to do it, and I start to watch the ball and the narrative. So always I fail into doing that, even though I'm really interested because it's so interesting when you get these close-ups or what kind of images they catch, and in which moment you are able to see. And I think these people make really incredible job of being like these kind of professionals of knowing exactly when and what is important, but also to sometimes put this kind of bonus uh, cherry on top images of someone. I don't know, giving some hint to someone on being sad, or I don't know, like the eyes and things which are impossible to see when you're there, when you go to see a game to the stadium.
And then I guess there's the question of watching versus doing. And I guess for someone like you, who's a filmmaker, that's quite a pointed question, right? Do you prefer watching football or playing football? And do you prefer watching films or making films? Those must be kind of very closely related questions for you.
I think in both cases, I prefer to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would skip any big match for a chance to kick the ball in my way and with my friends. Definitely,
I,
I prefer playing. And same with cinema. I think, of course, I love watching films, and it's also sometimes really nice to make it to not separate it and maybe watch a film on the same day when you've been shooting or when I'm editing. I really like to watch films, but still, it's maybe there I'm not as sure as with playing or football or watching football, where it's clearly playing is for me bigger pleasure. Maybe with films, it's less, and because I enjoy watching films, but I think if I had to choose, I would still like make pictures myself rather
I
watch.
guess when you're, say you sit down to watch a film by, I don't know, Bresson, maybe you can see a shot or a cut or a camera angle. It's a lot easier for you to then replicate that in your own work than it is for you to watch Leo Messi score a goal and then when you're playing with your friends to do what he does. So maybe there's a closer connection there with film than there is with football.
I guess, yeah, it's in a way of
Mm.
inspiring. Uh, I think if I get very inspired by watching football or sports, but not to do it also in sports. I think it's for life or maybe even for cinema, but not for my game. But of course, when I watch films, it inspires me to do films. Or also not only films, also in my life, it's sometimes very inspiring to see art or films, but I watch it also in that sense to integrate somehow to learn.
Word that's come up a couple of times now is narrative. And I remember when we were speaking about your previous film, What Do We See When We Look at the Sky? This was something that came up in our conversation. The way that sport and sporting figures produce narratives, kind of classical narratives, narrative tropes that we recognize from fiction, from art, but somehow seem to reproduce them in real life. I find that a really compelling idea. And in what do we see when we look at the sky? The romantic narrative that's at the heart of the film is kind of pegged to the crescendo of this World Cup that's happening in the background. So you kind of link the sporting narrative and the romantic narrative. So could you maybe just say a bit more about the ways in which sport, football or otherwise, creates in the real world a kind of magical kind of fictional fantasy narrative?
Yeah, I think that's also one of the things why I follow sports. And sometimes it's hard to explain to people who have never watched and then watch something for the first time. I don't know, it's any sports, because then if you watch football just for first time, then it's just this game for you, and then I can understand that it can be less interesting than for someone who is watching it for maybe 30 years, and then it becomes not just sports and not just playing with the ball, but you kind of follow all these people who are there through their lives, no? Like I remember watching a game of Barcelona and Leo Messi being subbed in for the first time, when you think, okay, who's this guy? And then after 20 years, I know like everything about him and all his ups and downs and how his story went. And it's not only him, but many other players whom you watch throughout their careers, with injuries, with changing clubs, and with being greedy for money, or being staying true for your own club, or stuff like this, which is not less interesting than really the sports itself. And sometimes I have a feeling maybe that's even more interesting for me. Maybe that's why sometimes I follow it as a whole, because I know all the stories, and that's very interesting, because again it is happening every day in front of your eyes, and it's real. It's not made up. But if you would just retell it in a book or in any form, it would follow one to one the narratives which later we tell our invented stories. And that's also when you start to believe, at least I start to believe, that these things are deeply connected, and it's important to look at others, to learn from it, and to believe that that a story can have a meaning. When you see people for such a long period who are true to something, who are giving everything to something, that sometimes they get rewarded for it differently. Some win a World Cup, some win a maybe local championship, or maybe don't win anything, but still like this kind of feeling of giving everything and staying true in the end is something really precious. And you see this in sports a lot. Like now, also in Olympics, you have so many stories with different athletes.
Yeah.
To every one of them, if you read a little bit, you understand every athlete is a has a unique story. And then it's someone wins, someone loses, but it's a clash of stories sometimes. Like we had this wrestler now who 3 years ago in Tokyo, he lost the final when he was winning, and there were like 4 seconds left, and then he lost. And then like he's also a guy who was kidnapped by Russian military when he was 10 or 11, and was kept in a prison for 3 months. And there is this video when he's brought back on the border, and he's just a little thick boy. And when you know all the story, and he's from this region of this, which is on the border to the occupied, part of the Georgia, and when you imagine this kid with 11 or 10 or being 3 months in a prison somewhere and then brought back, and then his whole life there, and then losing this final, which was so important to him. And then this Olympics, he was there in the final again. And then, of course, you remember all of this. And of course, this pressure is also on his shoulders, but it makes you full with emotions because you know it's not just this sports and it's not just the gold medal, it's the whole story. And then when he won, it was a huge thing. In that sense, it was more emotional maybe than other gold medals because of the narrative and the story.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned a Georgian athlete there, because finally, and just to end with here, I did want to bring this back to Georgia. I, like I'm sure many other people, was really thrilled watching Georgia at the Euros this summer. That was amazing. It was amazing just as a football fan. I can't imagine what it was like in Georgia itself. And I just wanted to ask, I mean, maybe this is a silly question, but football is obviously huge in Georgia. Georgia has very proud cinematic traditions as well. Is there a link for you between, or are there comparisons that you can make between Georgian football culture and Georgian film culture? Like when you look at them, do you see them recognizably as part of the same Georgian cultural universe, or is that a silly idea?
I don't know. Like I think that maybe it's not only football and cinema, but there are like these different fields which cooperate and are linked and kind of bloom sometimes parallelly in maybe same time. And I think uh, when there was kind of important times for Georgian cinema, more or less the same time there was also the best time for Georgian football. But it's not only football and cinema. I think in also different fields it was maybe this kind of 70s, 80s when there was little bit less pressure with everything and with more freedom in the Soviet Union than before, when many things started to bloom more. Now it's hard for me to say because it's the situation is really different now. Uh, Now there is, on one hand, if we talk about football, of course there is some school and kids got trained and so on, but still we can't talk about like Georgian school of football as it was in, because in Soviet Union it was big and there was
Right.
all the infrastructure to do it, and now it's much less. So now we are kind of still relying on some like these uncut gems who appear out of somewhere, of course out of old tradition also, but yeah, we are now kind of relying on this kind of people who are like talented individuals who maybe then also make a team. And I would say it's the same with arts or with cinema, where now if someone can make something, it's his or her
Kind of personal
will to
effort.
do it or talent, or
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's not that there is now that we have this kind of tradition or school or something which gives us something to hope for. So I think that's now that's the link maybe that we just wait for this kind of small miracles here and there in every field. But I think for the future, to in every field, it's important to stay more stable. You need more like a tradition. You need more, yeah, infrastructure to give the people who maybe are less lucky or need to work more hard to give a chance to also be seen. And I think these young guys who play now on such level are kind of not only playing and making everyone happy, but also kind of building this tradition or giving the hope that this kind of things really can happen. So we need to invest there, and we need to help the kids.
Well, we look forward to Georgian footballing talents of the future, Georgian cinema talents of the future, and of course we look forward to your new film Dry Leaf when it appears. Alexandre Koberidze, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us about film and football and fantasy and everything in between. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.